Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. You found your way here once again, where we answer all your tech questions 7 days a week. We're going to dive right into things. So, Alexander, what's our first question this morning?
First one's from Paul Walgus in Austin, Texas. Discuss the use of the Imaging Edge desktop app for local and remote management of a Sony camera.
And Alex, you're going to start us off.
All I can do is discuss it. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what the Imaging Edge. I don't know. Is that a desktop app? Is that available on the Mac? I don't know what I think we need links because I haven't heard of it before. So yeah. Maybe in another. We'll try to find it, but we're not. I don't. Don't know. Yeah, so we'll have to come back to it.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the next question.
James Haldane in Vancouver, BC, Canada. Does anyone make a zippered pouch for a 32-button Stream Deck? It appears it could fit in a Pelican 1120 case, but I'm hoping to find a more minimalist solution.
Well, they will be coming out quickly whenever Apple has a new product. The case people are right on it. But we're going to start with Courtney Gooden this morning. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
Well, it depends. And on that 32-button, I'm not sure. I don't have one, so I'm not sure if this little stand comes off and folds flat. And if it does, then you could use something like these zippered makeup pouches, and you can find them all over the interwebs and Amazon for about $10 that are padded makeup bags. And I've used a lot of those to isolate and put cables in because sometimes they have little pouches inside where you can hold all of your little cables and stuff. So something like that might do the trick. Just look on Amazon for makeup bags. And, they have some that are clear that'll go through at the TSA okay. Or they have some that are nice, tasteful black, and they have some in leather that are up around $60 so that you can get those.
Nigel.
Yeah, I found one on Amazon. I think it's for the slightly smaller one by a company called Casematics, Matix. And that was a quick search. So maybe if we go down the Casematics rabbit hole, we'll find a 32-button version.
Alex, Lindsay.
Yeah, and you can decide how much. A lot of things when you're trying to wrap something irregularly. Another thing you can think about are Domkey. There's these Domkey protective wraps, and I have many of them. And this is what you can see that I purchased. Let's see, 2 of them recently. So, or not recently, but last year. But I've bought a lot of these. This is what they look like, and you can see that they have Velcro on the outsides here. Basically, you can buy them in different sizes. You can see they're kind of soft on the inside or outside, depending on how you want to do it. And you can just wrap them around a lens, a camera, a Stream Deck. So it's not as if you're looking for something that if you don't want to put it in a hard case and you want it to be just kind of a little bit bigger than what it is and you want to keep it from getting nicked up. At one point, I don't think I have as many now as I used to, but at one point I probably had 20 or 30 of those. And anytime I just needed to put a bunch of stuff randomly together, it's a lot better than pulling them out of bubble wrap. And you can put, a lot of times I would write on the inside what the wrap was for. This belongs to this thing. And so for ones that went there regularly, because a lot of times you get to an event and you have a bunch of bubble wrap and you can't figure out which bag went where. These tend to last a lot longer. So Domkey is the protective wrap is something that I've used a lot of.
Jeffrey Powers.
First of all, so Courtney knows, that back does come off. It is magnetic. So if you're not taking that with you, then any of those cases work. I've looked at a lot of cases, and they're all for 15-button Stream Decks, not for 32-button. And there's actually some cases for that, the Stream Deck Plus with the dials on there. You just got to keep the case. The case, all my Stream Decks, I have the boxes for. I use the boxes. They fit in the Pelican cases, perfect. If you don't have the box, if that's a problem, go on eBay and see if somebody's actually selling the box, because sometimes they do, and you can check that out there. But yeah, it'd be nice. I even searched through Temu to see if there was a manufacturer that had something close. But nothing when it comes to, it's all about that back, and that's where the problems come. There is a hard shell, a metal enclosure that gets rid of the back, so it basically folds upon itself and then encloses, and then you should be able to find a case for that, no problem.
Yeah, and just in general, two other places I would look that I've had success. Case Logic makes a ton of semi-hard shell cases that are really padded in lots of different sizes. So once you get, just take out your ruler and measure it. The other company that I'm really very fond of, and I've had a lot of their products over the years, Think Tank. Think Tank is a big photographer supplier, and so if you know the dimensions, you should be able to find something in one of those lines. Hopefully that was helpful, James. Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. What near-field monitors would you recommend for electronic music? I previously had a pair of Focal Alpha 65.
Jason Bache.
I don't think there's anything that will really get low enough by itself that is just a near-field monitor. So back in my day, I used these, the Mackie HR 824s. The MK2 has a slightly better high range. But I have always added a subwoofer anytime I'm monitoring electronic. I just don't think it's possible to get low enough for anything desktop-based.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, if you have neighbors, if you live in an apartment, you probably don't want to use that subwoofer with that, that super Moog bass. These Genelecs are fairly popular. They're $700 a pair. They're the 3-inch studio monitors. Will fit nicely on top of a console and powered, but. That's one way to go.
Alexander Knight?
Yeah, it depends what your budget is. I mean, those Focals are pretty good. I mean, I love Focal monitors as well. I also love another great brand is the Atom series of monitors as well. So the A series, not the highest end, but it's a step above the T series, which is a entry-level monitor. But you can get these even up to like a 3-way design. So again, depending on what your budget is, the ribbon tweeter is pretty magical on these things. They sound really good. They also put out really good low end, but you know what? They do make subs starting with an 8-inch woofer as well. So you may want to look at this as well if you want a full range system. A subwoofer is really essential in my opinion. I know a lot of people say, oh, subwoofers are not necessary. Until you get to some of the much larger 3-way designs that produce a lot more low end, maybe you might not necessarily need that. But if you're working with electronic music, I mean, it's just a physics thing. There's only so much excursion you're going to get from your near field monitors, and below 40 hertz is really hard to do really well for not a lot of money.
Yeah, I had the Mackie 824s for a long time. Actually, when I moved into a smaller studio space out of my big studio, I switched to the JBL 305s. They do not have enough low end for electronica, but again, because the mid-range and upper frequencies are very clear and I'm used to them, adding a subwoofer is the way I would go for that as well. Just make sure you have something that gets you down into the electronically is so useful. Their whole frequency range, and particularly the low end, is so big on that I would always want some kind of support if I was actually mixing something like that. So just thoughts to think about, Douglas. Good luck with your search. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas asks, compare the new Mac Mini just released with the B-Link and similar PCs.
Alexander Knight's going to start us off. Alexander?
It's really hard to compare because, well, first of all, I'll say with B-Link and other brands that make these little tiny mini PCs, they have different processor options. So, for example, like on the low end, lots of us have bought the N95 and N100 Celeron PCs. They make great playback machines. They have H.264 decoding, so you can play lots of 1080p videos without any problem on these small little, $200, $250 PCs. B-Link does make some higher end stuff with some AMD Ryzen processors. They probably have one with an i9 as well, but there are a lot more advantages with the M4 because of Apple system on a chip design, because you get not only the H.264, H.265 encode decode sections of the processor, but you also get Apple ProRes encode decode. So you got to think about, what are you doing? If you're very, very video focused with your workflow, you're probably going to get a lot better performance out of those processors. Also, apps like DaVinci Resolve are heavily optimized for Apple Silicon. I mean, Resolve is cross-platform compatible, but heavily optimized for the GPU. So the GPU core is going to be really, really great for video-based workflows and other graphics-related heavy tasks as well. So just keep that in mind.
Alex Lindsay.
The B-Links and the Melees are a lot less expensive than the Mac Mini, and I've got a couple of them. And as utility computers, if you're not doing a lot of, you can still do a ton of video on them. They've got they support multiple monitors. They can play out a lot of video on their own. I'm sure Courtney will show that in a second. So they are very useful. Head to head, I don't think that there's another computer that, again, with the Mac Mini that can compete. If you get up to the $500 range and if you say, okay, well, I'm going to buy another PC at $500, you're not going to find something that has the same audio video performance or video performance and GPU performance of the Mac Mini for hundreds of dollars above it, probably 2 or 3 times what it is. So, but in the under $500 range, I think that there's a lot of utility for these smaller machines that can still do a lot of video, but probably can't do quite what. And I've talked to some developers. I mean, if it depends on also if you're writing directly to the to Metal, then you're taking full advantage of Apple's APIs. The machines are incredibly fast. If you're writing junk code, electrons and native, React Native and just trash code, then they may be much closer to the PCs. But if you actually write to the native apps, truly natively taking full advantage of Apple's APIs, you get an incredible amount of power out of these little boxes.
Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, we haven't torn apart a new one yet, but these I like these GMK N97s because they're Alder Lake, and they have a 24 core GPU in them, so 24 execution units. So you can do things like playback. I can play back up to 18 high-def videos simultaneously. With this, that's running right now on that GMK Tech, and it'll also run DaVinci Resolve. But if you want something a little more powerful than that, and that's $150. Actually, there's a 5% off, so it's less than $150 right now on Amazon for 12 gigs. Has a 512 gig SSD, and it has NVMe SSDs, which is pretty fast inside of it. And it has all the ports you can need. Another nice thing you can use them for glue. I looked at the price of NDI to SDI or NDI to HDMI converters, and they're like $300 a piece. That little computer, which comes with a full version of Windows 11 Pro, can run NDI tools. And so you can run an NDI Studio Monitor and get 2 HDMI outputs, and it has a gigabit Ethernet port on it as well. So without any dongles or anything, it can run 2 or 3. Some of them have 3 video outputs, 1080p NDI outputs into an ATEM or something. So that way it can take the place, because you can run 3 instances of NDI's Studio Monitor on it and output it to 3 of the HDMI ports, and use it as a single Ethernet to 3 HDMI outputs NDI converter. So that would come in very handy. The B-Links, you can get them with Ryzen's 7s. They're a little more expensive. This one's about $360, which if you need a little more powerful punch and a little more powerful CPU and GPU, those can do the trick for you. Otherwise, those $150 GMK Techs N97s are pretty powerful and great little glue pieces. Plus, you can fit 4 of them in the space. 4 of them together are smaller than the new Mac Mini.
Jason Beisch.
First things first, they're not out yet, so ask me on the 9th. Just don't ask me what it cost. Anything below $500, the B-Link is going to be an incredible deal and an incredible machine. The minute you hit $500, good luck finding Thunderbolt 5. Good luck finding bus that is anywhere near, and I mean like anywhere near, the Mac Mini's lowest, most base config.
Alex Lindsay. And of course, all this assumes you want to use something other than a Mac. I mean, I think that Apple's primary market is the people who already own Mac, already own Apple products. And so, regardless of, there's some we'll go over. And again, I have a mixture of PCs and Macs on my desktop and in our pipeline and everything else. But I would say probably 95% of Mac users just won't use PCs. What they're not looking for are these 2 pieces of hardware compatible. It's just like, is this the one that I want to run my Apple, Mac OS on? So I think that's the other distinction.
Hopefully that was helpful, Paul. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, would it be worthwhile to upgrade from an M2 Pro Mac Mini 12-core to an M4 Pro Mac Mini 20-core for audio work with heavy use of virtual instruments?
Nigel Dessau is going to start us off. Nigel?
So I'm almost exactly in that situation of a M2 Pro and looking at the M4 Pro for some of the workload I do. So I've been watching the iStat menu really carefully to see what percentage busy I'm getting, and I'm never getting above 30% on my M2 Pro. So for me, I don't think that makes sense. Now, with your audio work, Douglas, I would keep a check on iStat Pro, and if you find you're using up too much memory or too much performance or too much processor to the point where it's hitting performance, then I think there'll be a benefit there for you. They're so fast, the M2 Pros, unless there's something in the silicon particularly you're interested in, I would keep an eye on the performance and see what difference it would make.
Alexander Knight.
I don't think so. The M2 Pro is really good, and I don't know how much RAM you have on that computer. I'm assuming it's at least 16. It would be at least 16 on the base model M2 Pro. If you need more memory because you're hitting a wall, then that would be a reason. But again, there's got to be a reason. So, again, monitor your system resources. For audio stuff, the M2 Pro is such a good processor. And just remember that a lot of audio applications, they're heavily memory, bandwidth, and CPU constrained. They're not really utilizing the GPU at all. Some elements of the GPU are being used to draw the elements on the screen that you're seeing, but they're not GPU heavy. So if you want to get an M4 because of the increased GPU core, I don't think you're going to see a huge advantage there.
Let's see. Who's next on it? Jason.
Let me start by saying I really love audio, and I've done a whole bunch of audio work. I'm not Mickey, and I'm not a professional audio guy. That said, I've pushed the M1s, M2s, and M3s very hard. I've never, ever seen anything that you can't do that is strictly audio related on an M Pro, on an M processor that is Pro or above, period.
Jeffrey Powers.
I'll be the devil's advocate here. Yes, get it. Because you never know. Tomorrow morning, there might be a plugin that gets updated, a new plugin that comes in that everybody starts to use, and that plugin is going to take up as much resource as possible, and then you find out that the device that you're on is just not going to cut it. Maybe at that point you'll say, okay, now I'll have to make that switch, but you never know what's going to happen, what's going to come out the next day.
Alex Lindsay.
I'm going to side with Mickey and just say you should probably, if you're really thinking about, I should upgrade, the jump is not from a Mac Mini M2 to a Pro, but really to a Studio or a Mac Pro. Mac Pro is going to give you obviously a lot more I/O, and the Mac Studio is going to give you a lot more RAM. So you probably want to save your money and wait until those get upgraded rather than, this is a incremental change, but the lack of RAM support may become a problem in the future.
And I've been looking at them. I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to rev my laptop this time, but I'm on an M2 Pro, M2 Max chip, and it has been so fast and so capable, and nothing ever bogs me down. So I was thinking, do I really want to do that? It was interesting in the release yesterday of the laptops, they didn't compare to the M2 series. They did the original Intel series, the M3 and the M4, to look at the upgrade, and I was noticing there wasn't a big delta in the performance of those last two. Would have been interesting to see the M2s, which I'm on, to see if there was more of an incremental upgrade. But I'm thinking almost all of these are beyond what I particularly need as an individual to edit video and to do the audio work that I do for the audiobooks and things like that. So I think I might be slowing down on the idea of switching.
I will say I didn't realize I had this 3D render that I was doing out of actually Apple Motion, and I didn't realize the difference. I have a laptop. I have this little Intel laptop that I use when I go to the studio or whatever, and I had to re-render something, and it was literally what took my Mac Studio maybe 2 or 3 minutes to render was going to take 2 hours. I realized, wow, I'm just there's an entirely different. I'm an entirely
the leap out of Intel into these M series chips has been
and this is just an
M1
Mac Studio. It wasn't like it, but it's a Max, I guess, not an Ultra. But It was amazing what the difference was.
Yeah, that's what I'm running into. It's so fast now. Courtney, your thoughts?
I was just wondering how he has his older M2 Pro Mac Mini configured, how much RAM he's got in it, and they're still charging $200 for 8 gigs of RAM. Every increment of 8 gigs is another $200. So going to 16 to 16 to 32 gigs is another $400. I was wondering if any of you who ordered them priced them out, and what area of price are they landing in when you get them configured with just enough RAM to do the pretty good Final Cut Pro at its best kind of action on it.
Alex ran the numbers for maxed out everything, and it was very expensive, $4,600 or something like that. But that was everything.
$4,700. Yeah, you can definitely make a Mac Mini really expensive if you want to. I will say that
you bump up costs. For internal storage, it costs you quite a bit too. Right?
It's just so fast,
crazy fast.
It's now. I will say that with the new Thunderbolt, the new Thunderbolt 5, it's theoretical that we could get storage that was faster than the internal drives. NVMe RAIDs and so on and so forth. Those aren't out yet, but we would expect OWC to come up under it and give us something that's got really fast buses that are taking advantage of Thunderbolt 5. And so I think that theoretically takes some pressure off of buying that internal storage. But right now with my Mac Studio, fastest way to do it is, and I have footage. And the reason I'm sensitive to this is that I have a show that I could only edit on the internal drive, and so I had to do it in pieces because I only got a 1 terabyte drive because I was like, I don't put anything on the internal drive. I literally at 2.5 gigs per second cannot edit the show, in Resolve, and so it just couldn't keep up with the frames, so I couldn't get accurate frames. And then I switched. I think there's another question here. I switched to proxies. Proxy editing in Resolve is not always accurate, so that became a problem.
Oops.
So there's a bunch, so I couldn't get that done. So that's why I'm sensitive to you might want to put more drive space in. But with Thunderbolt 5, which you'll only get with the Mac Mini Pro, you can now theoretically have external storage that would be fast enough to do that kind of thing.
Also, the internal bandwidth to your internal storage goes up as you go to the Pro, and it goes up as you increase the size of the drive, too.
It's 120 gigs per second
faster
in the smaller ones and 279 in the larger.
Jason Bache, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, one more thought. And keep in mind, I buy everything. I have 4 Mac Minis, including 2 Studios. I adore the Mac Mini. I did buy another Mac Mini, but not because I wanted to get rid of any of the other ones. When it comes to the MacBook Pro M3, again, I buy everything. If you want it, get it. But I couldn't think of a single reason to upgrade the MacBook Pro with 4 terabyte hard drive that I bought last November.
There you go. Jeffrey Powers.
One thing I will add to that with the Thunderbolt 5, Thunderbolt 5 will still run on PCIe 4.0, and so expecting more speed from drives and stuff like that, it's just not going to happen right away. You'll be able to add more stuff, have more storage in there. And of course, the transfer of 120 gigabits per second, but it's not until we get to PCIe 5.0 technology where we can add in what's called CXL, which allows you to do a lot more, like add more memory and bring that into the system. I don't know how Mac would respond to that, but that's what I'd wait for. Thunderbolt 5 is definitely going to help with it, but it still has limitations.
Jason, you wanted to sneak back in?
Jeffrey may theoretically be wrong, and that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. As we're coming out, we're learning about these new machines now that they're out, and I think a lot of people are doing these comparisons, like what's the most efficient way to spend my money to get more computing power. I just think it's great to have constant upgrades and choices because these things are very powerful, and I'm astonished that I can do the work that I can do on a laptop. I would have never thought that 15 years ago that it would ever get to the point where a laptop could be my only daily driver and do all the media work that I do. So go figure. Next questions.
This one's from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. YouTuber Ola Englund got a beat and copyright strike on one of his own songs. An artist had pitch shifted his song and uploaded to Spotify. That artist's music company, Tencent, issued the strike. Now Ola's publishing company has to fight Tencent. Thoughts?
Ooh, this sounds like it's a little bit of an ugly YouTube throwdown. Jeffrey Powers, what do you think?
Yeah, so what happened was Tencent actually found a whole bunch of songs on YouTube, and they definitely changed it just a little bit and then threw it on Spotify because they noticed the artists weren't on Spotify, and they're basically squatting on this. So the most important thing is when you publish something on YouTube, even if you don't want that there anymore, set it to unlisted. The second that you delete it, you lose the ability to really claim that it was yours because of the date. Because you can actually go back and say, I published this on this date in 2021. They published on Spotify days later, years later, whatever. And that can be a perfect argument. But if you delete that file, then you can't go back to that point, and YouTube doesn't keep those records. So I highly recommend that if you don't want to keep it public, put it to private, and that way some of these squatters won't get money off of you for whatever you do.
Jason Bache.
This is a perfect example of kind of facsimile for copyright versus copyright. I can't tell you how many times I've been on stage and I've recorded a segment or a piece of video that I really liked from usually a DJ and have been told, please put that up. And of course, I hold the copyright. It's mine. It's my work. You could even have a video of me doing it. And it really just comes down to, okay, but do you have an agent and has it been registered? Because you saying, hi, I'm the person that made that doesn't mean anything in YouTube parlance.
Yeah, the rights management and rights understanding, this is just such a fluid thing right now. And I think everybody who creates content of any kind, you owe it to yourself to pay a little bit of attention to the laws and the international laws. Now that you put something up and it goes global, it's a really hard thicket to manage. Good luck with it all. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code, Chris G. in Kentucky. I would like recommendations for a Thunderbolt 4 dock. It's hard to find one that doesn't have lots of negative reviews. I have a 2023 M2 MacBook Pro.
Jason Bache, start us out here.
So when it comes to that MacBook Pro, there is no difference between a Thunderbolt 3 and a Thunderbolt 4 dock. So if that is your hard requirement, good luck. I think it's because people are just kind of playing around with the differences. The only one of which that matters to you is that Thunderbolt 4 supports DisplayPort 2.0. But my standout and for years favorite has been OWC's, and the reason that I really like it, this is the OWC Thunderbolt Go dock. And it's because they're using gallium nitride to do the power. So all you have is a C8 going in. There's no wall wart. It's going to turn around and down lane give you two Thunderbolt 3/4 turning down, give you HDMI, give you, I think this is 2.5 gigahertz Ethernet, two USB 3.2 ports, and then on the front you've got SD card, audio, and USB 2.0, and then another USB 3.2 generation 2, which would give you 10 gigabits right in the front. Oh yeah, and it delivers, I believe, 90 watts of power to your Mac.
Yeah, that was weird. When I was putting my OWC dock in, the realization that I was going to go plug the power into the laptop, I went, I don't have to. It's already getting it from the OWC dock. That surprised me originally. Nigel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to OWC as well. My point was going to be similar to Jason's. Be really sure what you want to connect, because you can overspend and have a lot of ports that you don't need. I use two fairly regularly. I use the OWC Thunderbolt Mini dock, which I don't think is 4, but it's absolutely great for travel to me. And then the one I use generally day to day on my system is the OWC Thunderbolt Hub, which is Thunderbolt 4. And again, it will all come down to how many things you need to connect and how fast you need them to be.
Courtney?
Yeah, now I for high-end work, I wouldn't recommend this, but if you just want to try it out, it doesn't cost that much. I just bought one of these for my Acer laptop, which has Thunderbolt 4 on it. This gives you a lot of USB. It gives you USB-A. It's 10 gigabyte transfer speed on the USB-C connectors on there. There's 2 outputs on it, and it has power, 100 watts power through PD, so you can plug your power supply in and it'll power this unit and charge your laptop at the same time. It also has a HDMI out dongle, and it also has 2 SD and micro SD card slots. So, and hey, it's under $20, so try it out, throw it in your laptop bag if you're going to travel around with it. I wouldn't necessarily use this on my desktop as my day-to-day work, breakout.
No, but when you travel, one of these little OWC docks is a really joyful thing. I like the fact that it travels pretty light and simple. There's a connected cable inside that attaches Thunderbolt 3.2 and HDMI and all the things you kind of normally need, a high-speed internet port. I just think they're very, very useful. I don't think I would ever leave home without one. So, next question.
This one's from Alex Lindsay in Novato, California. I have a quick update for our road to 4K for the show and why we're skipping.
Okay, Alex, dive in. What's happening?
Yeah, so some people noticed on a couple of the Saturday shows and on the Monday show we were seeing some frame loss, and so we are working very hard to get to 4K. And one of the reasons for that is, and this is a little bit of a side note, we don't have to go all the way to 4K, but we're going to anyway. Anything that is slightly larger than 1080p will go into a different, we're noticing will be compressed differently on YouTube and look a lot better. So we noticed that with the Monday shows, like, wow, this looks so much better than the regular show. And why is that the case? And obviously Vector's doing a great job at doing the scaling. But there was, we started digging into that. And what we did notice was that the image on YouTube looked a lot better. So we wanted to go to 4K. But we've had both on the Monday nights as well as our tests that we've done on Saturdays, we've seen some large dropouts in frames. Turns out, after some research and discussion with folks that know, that we were compressing, and this is not, the reason I bring it up is that it's not documented anywhere that we know of. We were compressing at 422, which is going to theoretically give you a higher quality image. And for whatever reason, that was kind of jamming up the transcode process inside of YouTube. By moving to, last night we moved to a test stream of 420, and the 420 seems to be working much better. So anyway, so 420 is seems to be, we're not seeing any buffering issues, anything else, and so we're going to test it on Saturday, and if Saturday works well, we think that we did some independent streams outside of the show. It's now looking like it's streaming it was night and day when we made that change. So we're going to test it on Saturday. If Saturday goes well, we'll probably start to stream in 4K UHD, which is not truly 4K, as Mickey points out in the chat. But UHD, will be streaming in UHD hopefully as early as next week. So we're pretty excited about it.
Alexander Knight.
I'm just curious, is this H.264? Is that what we're
currently
using?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we're doing H.264, RTMP. We may look at SRT, HLS. These are all, and we do think that if we deliver the 1080p's in HLS or SRT, we might also see some improvements in the stream. But right now we're using the RTMP to do that. What we're going to do is try to get the 4K up to speed, and then we're going to start doing some multi-channel streaming starting next week. First, just inside of YouTube, and then across a couple different social networks. Then the real work starts, which is that we want to do HDR, and the problem with HDR is that we can deliver that to YouTube but nobody else, and so we have to kind of figure out the pipeline of what that looks like, and then once HDR is working, then we'll go to a 5.1 pipeline, and so which will, again, we have to figure out how that looks for YouTube, which is the only thing that can really handle it, and then how it looks for everybody else, and so we have to there's kind of a dual pipeline thing that we have to figure out. So we're going to be working on that, but you'll see it. You'll see. I think we've talked about it a little bit on some of the shows. Not a lot of second hours starting in November because we're figuring all this stuff out. We realized that we were moving very slowly because we were constantly worried about external guests, being part of the test. And so we're going to get this all through the system. We're going to be working on it every week throughout the days, and really try to get to a point where that platform, which we've been trying to get to for a couple of years, just gets done, and then we don't think about it anymore, and it just works. And then once we get to that point, we'll look at how do we get most of that functionality, if not all the functionality, into the cloud. So those are the things that we're kind of churning through right now to move it forward. It has the opportunity to really build something that I think doesn't really exist anywhere, and gives people who want to play hard the ability to show some pretty great content online live, probably higher resolution and higher quality than even broadcast is typically capable of. So we're pretty excited about it.
Exciting days ahead. Alexander, do you have a thought?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Looking back up at the top, I thought I hadn't gone there. Let's go to the next question.
This one's from the QR code. Cindy Drozda in Erie, Colorado. Is there a way to create a Stream Deck button, either with the Stream Deck software or with Companion, that will give vMix focus so that the vMix shortcuts will work without sending a keystroke to vMix at the same time?
Nice QR code question. Jeffrey Powers, can you help out?
Well, Cindy, I'm not exactly sure what you're meaning by that, because both Companion and Stream Deck have vMix compatibility. There's actual apps that you can get that will do that. So if you're doing just a hotkey switch with your vMix, you might want to look into the store to find the vMix plugins that you can put in there. I've used the vMix plugins on my desktop, Windows and Mac, where and they don't lose focus when I'm switching over to like Chrome or anything like that. So if you're using hotkeys, I would definitely take a look at the apps. If that's not the case, if you are using the apps, then you might want to rip it out of your system, put it back in, and see if that makes a difference.
Jason Beisch.
Cindy, if I remember correctly, you're running Windows, and on the taskbar, if you count away from the start button, you can automatically launch anything that's in that taskbar. So 1 away from the start button, if you hold down Windows and press 1, will launch the first thing. Windows 2 will launch the second thing, and so on and so forth. So as long as it's down there in your I was about to say dock, in your start menu, that keystroke will automatically give the app focus.
Thank you very much for that. Don't forget, the show is always run on your questions. So if you have them and you want to slip them in, we might have time for a couple of ones that are already in the queue today. And as always, if you use the QR code here, go put your questions in. The folks who are in the big system in Mukana can vote those questions up and down. So even though you're getting into the show a little bit late, if you're just putting a question in now, there is at least some chance that it could get voted up and get on the show very quickly. This is how we run the show and how we prioritize what we talk about every day here on Office Hours. Let's get to our next question.
This one's from the QR code as well. Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. asks, Canon Mark IV upgrade? Follow-up, we've used them since 2011 for everything but live switched multi-cam events and streaming. We are heavily lens invested, as was pointed out, and we've also swapped out our JVC 550s and 890s for 4 Canon XF605s.
Interesting, Brian. Alex, do you have some help for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've got a lot of EF lenses, which I would imagine you have for those Canons, I mean, you may really want to look at some of the Blackmagic, Ursas and mini Ursas that are out there, even 6K cameras, to shoot some of those things. You're already used to that kind of 6K form factor. There's also the Pixies, I think, the new Blackmagic cameras that are there. The big thing is look for the Ursas, not all the Ursas, not the 12K, but the other ones, and as far as the 6Ks, are all shadable from the switcher. Like it really is, when you're doing live, it is super addicting to be able to do that. In addition to that, you can do things like if you are using, let's say, a mini extreme for these things, you can hit record. It's going to hit record on all the remote cameras if they're getting a return, and it's going to record a derp file, that's the Blackmagic resolve file, as well as all the ISOs, as well as turning all the cameras on, and so that you can tie all those back together. It's a really powerful way to do live production, especially if you want to do post later. It depends on what kind of shows that you're doing as to what you can lay them on. But I still use a lot of the 6Ks and the Ursas. I've been using that mixture for a very long time now. I don't use it for everything. We did a show last night. And we were using all FR7s and FX6s. The FR7s are great PTZ cameras. Blackmagic doesn't. Most people don't make them. I don't think anyone makes them at the same visual quality right now as Sony does in the FR7s. And then we use the FX6 because it matches the FR7s mostly. So those are the things. Those are the big advantages of those. one big question is, how far are you shooting? Are you sitting in the back of the room, or is this a studio experience? I noticed that you were having the JVC 550s and 890s that you replaced with the Canon XF 605s. Are you doing long shots? If you are, then some of these cameras make sense. If most of your work is under 20 feet or under 25 feet, I would strongly recommend thinking about larger sensors, whether it's Blackmagic or someone else. I shoot a ton of questions a ton of events that are under 50 feet, and generally I'll only use Super 35 or larger because it just looks way better. I know, the shorter depth of field is what a huge portion of our viewing audience is used to looking at on YouTube, and used to looking at in a variety of different areas. And smaller chips, 1 inch, 2/3 inch, 1/2 inch, look very sharp. And we're not used to looking at that anymore. I think that 4/3 is okay if you structure it well. But I think that in general, Super 35 sensor or above gives you a look that is, I feel, much more pleasing than most of the smaller sensors. So think about that as well. I think that it gives a lot of events more what subliminally says there's more gravitas to this because it's shorter depth of field. Whether that's true or not, I think it definitely feels that way. I mean, it definitely feels like a different, and you can see it even being experimented with by the NFL. In the last 20 yards, they have steady cams that are running out, and those are using full frame sensors to get that really short depth of field, and it looks dramatically different when they run out there, and I think dramatically better. I don't think you can shoot the whole show that. By the way, I don't think you could shoot. I don't think you could shoot football with large sensors. You can only do it at the end because those cameras are so far back that their depth of field is already an issue at a 2/3 inch chip.
You mentioned NFL coverage, and it was really weird. I saw a photo go by of somebody shooting from the sidelines with an NFL press pass, and they were shooting to an iPhone, I think, for social media. But they were using one of these, the B-Script depth of field Mark III adapter, and using EF lenses on it. And they had some really long lenses. It was the shots they were getting were surprisingly good. And I'm hearing a lot of discussion in the iPhoneography world right now. They've been really hard to get those adapters for a while, but I guess they're back in stock now, at least for a limited time.
Who makes that one?
It's B-Script. B-Script DOF MK3 adapter. It allows you to use your Canon glass, your EF glass, on your iPhone with the B-Script mount for the phone. Right. And so you have the world of new lenses opened up to you for your phone. Fun thing. Just a quick reminder, Apple had a bunch of releases this week. And when you watch those videos, just remember, now they put a bunch of hardware around it, but they do annotate at the end, shot with an iPhone, and they're serious about it. And they are shooting those with iPhones, and it's pretty impressive. It's not perfect. I definitely notice there are certain things that I notice about the imagery, specifically vertical lines. If you look at some of the stuff inside of that little portal, you'll notice those vertical lines are aliasing. I think it has something to do with the phone. But overall, I think that it's pretty impressive. I was just going back. I had to spin off some content. So I was looking back at some of the stuff I've shot at street fairs for one of my clients the last couple of years. And I was looking at the first year that I did that I switched from my Blackmagic 6K to the iPhone because it was just too hard to work with the big rig. And that footage looks beautiful even from back then. So, yeah, there's a lot of pluses in learning to leverage this new phone camera technology. They've invested a ton in it, and it can be very, very useful. Not for everything, but for a lot of things. Next question.
From the QR code, Kent in Madison, Ohio. We use vMix and we have graphics already set up. We have to manually add the raw data. Is there a way to load the Ohio voting website in vMix data sources? Right now, we are just using Google Sheets. Thanks.
Jeffrey Powers, can you help out?
So to use in vMix, you have the graphics editor, and the graphics editor uses what's called Data Sources Manager to bring that in. I have Google Sheet that brings in data into some of the graphics that I make. The Data Sources Manager will accept spreadsheets, RSS, JSON, and XML. Now, for the spreadsheets, you do need an API to actually bring that into vMix. But whereas RSS and JSON, if they're publicly available, then you can just bring them in and edit them yourself. If this website does not have any of that information that you can freely grab, then you're just going to have to do it manually or do it through a third-party program.
Hopefully that helped you, Kent. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania asks, what software options are there for pre-visualization and blocking of camera placement and dynamic camera movements for jib and slider shots?
Alex, can you help them out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a wide variety. There's some storyboard software, and I know that Jeff Orthwine was on talking about the software, and I can't think of what he was using, but he was using some stuff that gave him some dynamic moves. So there's some storyboard software that'll do that. I don't remember what the names are. Primarily, the things that we've used in the recent past have been sorry, I was thinking something popped up on my machine. I sat and looked at it. I was like, I got distracted there. SketchUp. So squirrel. So SketchUp has a whole bunch of cinema tools that you can actually add on to it. That's going to give you depth of field, let you choose lenses, let you do a lot of things. So a lot of us have used SketchUp for that kind of pre-visualization. The render is a little bit slow, but it works well. And then Unreal Engine also is something that is a lot of folks use for pre-visualization. Of course, you have a lot of real time there, and you put a lot of things in. I think that there's a lot of things in the marketplace that will let you even get into lights with DMX and all kinds of other things that are the DMX actually just flows right in, and you can use your ETC board with it. So that's a really interesting solution for some of that pre-visualization. Also, I mean, one of the things that's starting to happen is things like Runway AI and other tools are starting to allow you to do incredible pre-visualization where I have a picture of this or I want this, and I create unified characters, and then I just shoot video footage of what I want them to do and give them the scene, and it just builds the scene in. This is something that I think you're going to see a lot of coming up, is people being able to build some of this pre-visualization very quickly in AI. I don't think AI is necessarily going to be used in final frames for a lot of films anytime soon, but I think that it's going to revolutionize previs as far as how we how close we get to what we're trying to achieve and get the feel of it very, 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 very quickly.
Courtney Gooden.
I haven't used it, but there's one piece of, I guess it's a site or software called Backlot that is a collaborative design tool designed for filmmakers for doing previs and planning and storyboarding. I think it's got a lot of 3D tools for lighting and things. So you might take a look at that. It's downloadable, or I think it is subscription-based. So take a look at that, called Backlot.
Next question.
From Jeffrey Reyes in Bronx, New York. Alex, if you were to spec out the new Mac Mini, what would it have? Would you go for the Mac specs? M4 Pro, 20 cores, 64 gig, 8 terabyte?
Alex, what would you go for?
You know, I think that I am looking at getting one. I'm trying to figure out whether I really need a Pro or not. I don't think that I'm probably going to get that. I'm probably going to get to be honest, I'm probably going to get the base unit. I got to do some tests. I may have to order many of these, potentially hundreds of them. And so I want to see if I can get away with the base unit, because when you multiply the cost difference, it's a big deal for what I'm doing. So I'm probably going to get the base one and see how that works. I'm probably going to get my kids are probably looking at, they don't know that, they don't want to watch the show, but probably, the educational versions of those for Christmas, because they both have needs that I think these will handle well. Now, if I was going to use it in production, I would look at 64. I probably wouldn't get the 8 terabytes because, man, does that jack the price. And now with when we see new drives using Thunderbolt 5, if I see that the speeds are going over the drive speed that's available here, then I'd be much more tempted to stick with a 1 terabyte internal drive to save money, and I'd rather externalize that if I can. 64 gigs maybe. I just don't think I'll use it for that I don't think I would use it for that kind of work. So I think 64 gigs is probably more than I would need. Probably 32 is probably plenty, or somewhere in that range. I am probably really more seriously looking at waiting for the Mac Pro or the Mac Studio middle of next year. I don't have a strong need for another powerful computer, and I need the extra monitors. I mean, right now with my Mac Studio, I'm using 4 monitors, and so I'm already over what these natively handle. And so if I was going to spend that much money, I would want it to do all those things, and it doesn't do all those things. And so I think that it's still advanced glue, but I'm not really looking at it as a hard production machine. The one that I get is most likely going to become my Zoom computer that just does Zoom. That's what it does, and so most likely that'll be its mission.
Jason Bache.
All right, so I kind of threaded the needle on this one. I already have 2 studios that I love that are relatively maxed out, and an M1 and an M2 Mini. So I went kind of halfway into the middle. I got 10 gigabit Ethernet. I got 2 terabytes of storage. I didn't push the RAM, but I did get the lowest of the high processors. My reading of this shows that if you go up on the processor, specifically on the base level Mini, there's a substantial bus kick that I wanted to take advantage of. So as configured, about $2,000, depending upon your sales tax.
There you go. Alexander Knight.
I'd be curious to see some Zoom ISO performance tests of, say, a base level M2 Mac Mini versus a base level M4, because now you have double the amount of RAM on the base level M4, and obviously the CPU and the GPU is also improved. So I think some benchmarks will be really interesting to look at.
Alex, you want to come back?
Yeah, we're interested in doing the benchmarking as well with Zoom ISO, and that's one of the things I'm going to play with this machine, is have it be able to output tons of Zoom ISO. But I have a feeling that at 16, which will be 16 is the most you can do out of Zoom ISO just from a high bandwidth mode limit. At 16, I'm going to bet that it's less than 35% at least on the Pro. Like it's just going to be humming along at that number. That's my guess.
Jeffrey Powers?
If you are going to do the video that they did at the end of yesterday's session, where the weightlifter and doing the dance and things like that, if you're going to be doing stuff like that, then you probably want to go for the highest end. But yeah, as everybody else said, I'm thinking over a terabyte doesn't make much sense in a lot of workflows, and you can put extra storage in through Thunderbolt.
Next question.
From the QR code, Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin. I support cinematographers and editors who import high bitrate files to their timelines, and we can hit storage I/O and bandwidth limits on the NAS stored files. What are the downsides to moving to a proxy-based workflow to relieve this?
Alex.
It definitely can work. I mean, I think one of the problems is that I've had issues with Resolve specifically and not being accurate in the edit. So when I build the proxy workflow, I've found that my edits weren't frame for frame the same in the proxies as they were in the final, which was a big deal for me for what I was cutting. And so I think that's been the issue that I've had with proxy-based. I have used it a lot. It slows things down a little bit. I mean, it speeds things up when you're editing, and so that can make sense. Getting back and forth, I have just over the years with almost every proxy-based flow have found that there's just lots of idiosyncrasies. Little things get broken. Little things don't work the way that I thought that they were going to do. Things render differently. There's a whole bunch of things that I personally don't like. As a result, most of the time when I'm doing work, most of my workflows are that I have a really fast direct attached storage that I'm doing the work on. And when I'm done with it, I put it on a NAS or I put it on something else. So I drop it off to something slower when I'm done with it. But when I'm working on it, I have a direct attached storage that is as fast as it will go, sometimes internal to the machine, so that I can get the speed out of it and I stick with the full resolution files.
And for me, I've been using proxy workflows for a long time. I haven't used them because my machines have been so fast lately. I haven't had to for probably the last 5 years. But before that, one of the things that I learned was that if you are bringing in high density files, big files, keeping them on a system that is local to your machine and generating the proxies inside Final Cut. Now, I don't know about Resolve and how it works, and I also don't know people who are using Premiere or Avid whether they have the same workflow. But the in-software proxy workflow in Final Cut is pretty flawless. I've never had a problem, particularly if you create your project or your proxies inside, you do the transcoding inside Final Cut, it makes sure that the links to the stored proxy versions and the original versions are identical. And I've never had an experience other than I can work in proxy all day long, click on move to original media, and everything is perfect, and I can export projects out of that, click back on proxy, go back to any editing I want to do, click back on original, and it exports off the original files. So inside of that workflow, it has been flawless for me. And I don't know, that's probably Apple working on Apple's software on Apple's machines to get all that to work smoothly. But that's been my experience. Next question.
This one's from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. May have already talked about this, but I've ordered an M4 Mac Mini with 512 terabytes of storage for conversations with Tony Mobley. The M1 is being pushed for the show. What are your thoughts?
Alexander Knight, can you help Tony out?
I'm curious what else you're running, Tony, because I think you and I have very similar workflows, because I have an M2 Mac Mini that is running just the base model with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is also running Mimo Live, and doing pulling in 1080p participants, not that many people, maybe 3 at the most, and streaming to YouTube at 1080p. It barely touches the processor and the GPU. So I'm not sure if maybe you're running other applications in the background there. I'd like to know, but for me with my base level, it's fine.
Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama City. I'm on a Mac Mini Intel 2018. Which Mac Mini M1 or M2 would have the same form factor to upgrade my production? I have it racked to a Sonnet 1U. Want to upgrade just to replace the heart of my fly kit.
We were discussing a little bit at something around this before the show or in the early parts of the show. The jump from the Intel chipset to the M series chips has been gigantic for almost all of us who have done that. So I would highly recommend that if you can make that leap and get out of the old Intel machines, they're getting real long in the tooth as of when the M2 dies were finished and Apple started transitioning to those. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, if you're replacing that heart, you want to stay in that form factor. The M2s are going to be a great solution, and they're probably going to be less expensive now. The new ones we don't know how the new ones are going to get racked well. I mean, they're not. Apple obviously didn't think that was important. Like when they did the new ones, because they don't fit comfortably anywhere into a rack. So we think that at a high density, 8 of them at a time, you may be in a better situation. But those are the, so that's the. That's what I would think about. So, but if you want to keep it in that form factor, the M2, I'd probably get 16 or 32 gigs of RAM. Give it a terabyte of storage. You should be in pretty good state.
Let's see, get one more question. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. It's Halloween, so that calls for low light gear. What's an ideal run and shoot setup for capturing Halloween night's eerie lighting, creepy sounds, and outrageous costumes?
Jason Bay, start us off. What are you going to do this evening?
Let's see. I would say an iPhone 16 and a little gimbal. That's it.
Oh, perfect. Courtney.
You stole my answer. That's what I was going to say. An Osmo, DJI Osmo for $107. Put your phone on there, put it in low light mode. And you need it to be stable because in low light mode, everything gets kind of smeary because it holds it does very long exposures. So you want to keep it as stable as possible. Put it on a tripod or use a gimbal, and you'll get a little better reaction out of those low light phone sensors.
Yeah, I would say I would combine what everybody said. I have a DJI Osmo 4 that hooks up with I bought connections for all my iPhones in the past. I also like to use it on a monopod. I find that if I'm going to be out for a long time shooting, just having a monopod hanging on the end of the Osmo, even though it's designed for handheld, that adds an additional bit of stability. And if you're going trick-or-treating with kids or something like that, you could be out there for a half hour, 45 minutes, and holding your arms out to catch every interaction at the doors and things like that. Or if you're going to a party, I guess fewer and fewer kids actually go out around the neighborhoods to trick or treat, and a lot of them do parties. It's a great little quick and easy setup You can also do fun things like, when you're out trick-or-treating, I've run across groups of kids that have pets that are in costume with them or something like that. I love the fact that I can flip my monopod around 180 degrees and get down to a low shot of like that. You can get some really cool things. And phones are so good these days in low light that I would be looking at that. That's how I would deal with it. All right. Couple of notes here as we finish up the show. Alex is going to come back and talk to the Viz Vectar folks right after this. But for right now, don't forget, if you want a tangible way to demonstrate your support for the show, check out the new Office Hours shirts at http://officehours.global/shop. They're very cool. And $20 of the purchase price goes to support our efforts here at the show. So if you like what we do and want to support us, that is an excellent, excellent way to do it. Don't forget it's Monday, don't forget this coming Monday, extra hours. And we'll be right back with more show.